name is Deborah, this is Booking with Deborah. Today's video is all about the books that I am planning to read throughout July. However, before I get stuck into the books, I just wanted to start by saying a massive big thank you to everybody who has watched my previous video, which was introducing my another reading challenge that I'm doing for myself, which is 50 books to read before I'm 50, where I shared some classic books that I would like to read. So many fantastic comments from people. Thank you to everybody who commented, suggesting different books that I could try, telling me about their favourites, giving me recommendations, other suggestions, useful advice. Really fantastic. Thank you so much. So I'm going to take a kind of copy of all of those comments so that I can refer back to them in future. If you've not managed to see that video yet, I will link it in the description box down below. But thank you everybody who took the time to comment on that video. The other thing I just wanted to mention before I go into my July TBR is that I'm aware I haven't actually wrapped up the books that I've read in May as yet, and also not yet for June. I am working on either a May and June wrap up, or I might film them separately depending on how much I have to say about each book, but I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks I will have a wrap up coming soon, at least for the books that I've read in May. And just to let you know what is coming up next week on my channel, I am planning to do a bit of a chatty video, which is just a kind of mid-year reading check-in along with a channel check-in and just a general live check-in. So that will be going live on Saturday morning next week UK time. My plans for July was that I had got some buddy reads planned, which I was going to be doing, and then for the rest of July I was going to be mood reading. That's what I had kind of set myself as a bit of a reading goal for July. So I wasn't planning to be doing a July TBR. And then I got my head turned by lovely people in the booktube community, and I've ended up getting involved in various read-alongs, book clubs, readathons, so I thought I would share a TBR and let you know what I'm planning to do in case it's something you're interested and you want to join in as well. The first book that I am planning to read in July is Thin Places by Kerri Dochartaigh. Kerri Dochartaigh was born in Derry, and this is a memoir of her life growing up during the height of the Troubles in Derry in Ireland. One of her parents was Catholic, one of her parents was Protestant, and she was forced to move homes when her home was petrol bombed. And in this memoir, she sort of shares her experiences of living in Ireland during the Troubles, but she also talks about how nature came to be a big part of her life and really supported her in dealing with those things. Kerri explores how nature kept her sane and helped her heal, and how we are again allowing our borders to become hard and terror to creep back in. Kerri asks us to reclaim and rejoice in our landscape and to remember that the land we fight over is much more than lines on a map. One of the things that I am hoping to do more of in the second half of this year is to read more non-fiction, and I'm particularly interested in non-fiction with a nature theme. But I also think I'm going to learn quite a lot from reading this book in terms of understanding some of the issues that have affected people living in Derry in the past. And I am reading this book as part of the Naturalist Bookclub, and that is run by Heidi at My Reading Life and Doris at All D Books. They are doing a Naturalist Book Club through the whole of this year, where they've picked a different either book of the month or an author spotlight of the month, and they're encouraging people to join with them in reading those books. So I will link their channels in the description box down below. This is one of those things that I've only recently discovered, and I wish I'd actually found it earlier on, because they've read some really interesting books together, which I would like to have read with them, but hopefully going forward it's something I'll be able to get involved with more. And then my next reads that I've got planned in July are some buddy reads. So the first buddy read that I am planning to do is to read Cranford by Elizabeth Gaskell, and I am buddy reading this with the lovely Art at Bookshelf Odyssey. I will link his channel in the description box down below if you're not familiar with him already. I followed along with Art as part of the Great Expectations read along, which ran from January until the end of May. So this book was first published in a serial format, and it's stories looking at Victorian life in a country village, following the life of two spinster sisters, Miss Mattie and Miss Deborah, and that is Miss Mattie and Miss Deborah there. And it's all about kind of the gossip and the goings on in their community, but I also think it looks at the role of women in their community at that time, so I think this will be quite a good read. I've only read short stories by Elizabeth Gaskell so far, so I'm looking forward to getting into this one. And then the next buddy read that I have planned for July is to read Black Mamba Boy by Nadifa Mohamed, and I am reading this with Gemma of Gemma Books, and I will link her channel in the description box down below. This is historical fiction set in Somalia in the 1930s, so this book also helps me with my Read Around the World challenge for Somalia. It is quite an epic book by the sounds of things. It's all about a young boy called Gemma, and we see the world through his eyes as a young boy. It's his time in Africa during the Second World War, so he looks at how the Second World War affected Africa, which is not something I've really read about before, but it goes on a journey with Gemma as he travels through Djibouti, war-torn Eritrea, Sudan and Egypt, and then how he ends up travelling across the sea and comes to Britain. This sounds like it's going to be full of historical detail about things that I don't really know anything about, so I'm looking forward to reading this, but I think it's also going to be quite heartbreaking at times as well. And then the rest of the books that I am planning to read for July is to participate in Jane Austen July readathon. Now, I wasn't planning to participate in Jane Austen July. I have never read anything by Jane Austen, and in my 50 books before 50 classics, there was no Jane Austen in there. But as many of you know, if you're part of the booktube community, whether you have your own channel or whether you just choose to watch booktube channels, it's very easy to get sucked into the hype and the excitement around read-alongs and readathons, and when you hear people talking about their plans and things that you can get involved in, you can end up getting suckered in and wanting to join in as well, and that is basically what's happened with me and Jane Austen July. For anybody who is not familiar with Jane Austen July, it is hosted by 3 booktubers, Katie at Books and Things, Claudia at Spinster's Library and Blatantly Bookish, and I will link all of their announcement videos in the description box down below, so if you want to go and find out all about it and what they have planned and the challenge prompts, you can go away and watch those. This year there are 7 challenges that you can participate in if you want to. However, they've been really clear that if you just choose to read one of Jane Austen's main 6 works, you have participated in Jane Austen July. So I'll go through the challenges and then I'll let you know what I'm planning to read to meet each of those challenges. The first challenge is to read one of Jane Austen's main novels, and for that I am going to be reading Persuasion. This will be my first Jane Austen read, and I am actually going to be reading this book as part of a read-along, the Persuasionalong, which is hosted by 2 other booktubers, and that has been hosted by Jack at Spread Book Joy and Gemma at Gemma Books. It's a kind of separate read-along to the main hosted read-alongs. And we're going to be reading that book in the first 2 weeks of July. I will link their announcement videos in the description box down below for the Persuasionalong. So if you want to go and find out more and you'd like to come and join us, you can go and check out their videos. As I've said in previous videos, I'm not really sure if Jane Austen is going to be for me or not, but I'm definitely willing to give it a go. And I was really interested when I found out a little bit more about Persuasion. And it appealed to me because my understanding of having not read it is that it actually focuses on older protagonists. So a couple who I believe met in younger life and who were engaged, but it didn't go ahead, and then they meet when they're much older. The second prompt is to read something by Jane Austen that is not one of her 6 main novels. And the hosts of the readathon are doing a read-along of Lady Susan, which is a novella of Jane Austen's, which I am going to be reading along with them, and I believe we're reading that in the 3rd week together, and you'll be able to find out that more from their announcement videos. And this novella is all about Lady Susan Vernon, who seeks an adventurous second marriage for herself while attempting to push her daughter into a dismal match, so it all sounds a little bit scandalous. The third challenge is to read a non-fiction work about Jane Austen or her time, and for that one I am going to be reading A Visitor's Guide to Jane Austen's England by Sue Wilkes. This is actually quite a short non-fiction book. I think it's about 184 pages, so I thought that would be quite a nice place to start for me, myself, as I don't really know anything about Jane Austen or the kind of Regency Georgian era that when she was doing her writing and when she lived. So this book is an exploration of how the middle and upper classes lived from 1775, the year of Jane Austen's birth, to her death in 1817, and it covers all aspects of daily life within the Regency period. I am always really interested in the sort of day-to-day lives that people had in different periods of history, and I think it'll be a really good short introduction into kind of Jane Austen's era of time. Then the fourth challenge is to read a retelling of a Jane Austen book or a work of historical fiction set in Jane Austen's time. Now, as Persuasion is my first Jane Austen book, I don't want to read a retelling of any of Jane Austen's other works at this time, because I want to obviously read the originals first. So I'm going to opt for reading historical fiction set in Jane Austen's time, and I love that idea of a challenge actually as somebody who loves historical fiction. And at the moment I've just got a bit of a pile of possibilities for the historical fiction, and I'm going to see how I feel after I've finished reading Persuasion in the first 2 weeks, and then pick up my historical fiction in the second 2 weeks of July, and I'll just see how I feel. So the sort of small pile of possibilities that I've got, the first one is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, which is the first book in the Bridgertons series. Now, I started watching the Bridgerton series on, I think it's on Netflix, isn't it, quite a while ago, and then I sort of didn't continue with it, and I didn't particularly lose interest, but I just stopped watching it and started watching other things. So I thought it might be quite nice to actually read the first book and then go back to the series. Another option that I've got is a more recent release, which is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Irwin. Now, both of those books, my understanding of them is that they very much fit within the kind of Regency era and possibly a nod to kind of Jane Austen's work. I think that's what they are. So those are two possibilities. But as I'm not really a massive kind of Regency romance era type reader, I wasn't sure if I would want to read those after having read Persuasion and Jane Austen. I might want to read something a bit more different that would maybe give me a very different idea of life during that time, during Jane Austen's time. So the two options that I've got, Burning Bright by Tracy Chevalier or Blood and Sugar by Laura Shepherd Robinson, which starts out in 1781. At the moment, I'm going to be honest and say I'm probably most drawn to Blood and Sugar. It is obviously completely and utterly different from Jane Austen's work in the sense that it's a thriller, it's a mystery, it's a crime book. It starts out with a body that is found hanged in the Deptford docks in London, and it looks at themes around sort of the slave trade, the realities of British Empire and abolition. So I thought that would give me like a really nice contrast to that period of history. So I'm just going to see how I feel. If I'm in the mood for some more sort of Jane Austen-esque type books, I might go for one of the first two books, and if I wanted something different as a historical fiction, I'll think of maybe one of the second two. So those are my small pile of possibilities for that challenge. And then the fifth challenge is to read a book by a contemporary of Jane Austen's, so somebody who published works during her lifetime. And the host did suggest that poetry was an option, so I'm actually going to be reading some poetry by William Blake, and I am going to be reading Tyger, which is a small poetry collection, is part of the Penguin Little Black Classics series. And I thought that would be a nice introduction to William Blake's poetry, because I'd not read any poetry from this era either. And then the final two challenges are actually watching challenges. So number 6 is to watch a direct screen adaptation of a Jane Austen book. And as well as the Persuasionalong read-along that is being hosted by Jack at Spread Book Joy and Gemma of Books, they're also hosting a watch-along of of Persuasion. I think there is a bit of a plan to watch the 1995 adaptation, maybe, but there is a definite plan to watch the new Netflix adaptation, which is due out in the middle of July. So I am probably going to watch both of those in the second half of July once I've read the book. And then the 7th challenge, which is also a watch along, is to watch a modern screen adaptation or a retelling of a Jane Austen book. Now, I've not seen any modern screen adaptations of Persuasion that I'm interested in watching, and I don't want to watch any of the other modern adaptations having not read the books, even though I have actually watched some of the actual screen adaptations of Jane Austen books. I can't really remember what happened in them, but I don't want to kind of ruin the books in future for myself by watching modern retellings. So for that 7th prompt, what I thought I would do is watch the film adaptation that was made of Lady Susan. It's actually called Love and Friendship, and that is available on Netflix. So for that sort of watch along challenge, that I'm going to watch that one as well, also in the second half of July. Those are all the books that I am planning to read in July. As I've said, I'll put all of the details of everything I've mentioned in the description box down below, so if you are interested in joining in anything, all of the information will be down below. I'd love to hear in the comments anything that you are planning to read in July. I hope you're all doing okay. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye.